Are we audible? It says that there's audio coming through that, so.
No one said they were coming, or
No. John can't make it. I guess this is just not functioning right now. That's weird. Anyway, John can't make it. He is out of town at, I think, a daughter's wedding. And then Will can't make it because there's something.
A banquet, yeah.
Good for him. But
James.
Yeah, let's say that's a motion to adjourn, right, for Watson. We're 1 minute late, so sorry.
Anyway, it is
Very short meeting.
showing audio.
Motion to adjourn. Anybody-
Second.
James.
Hey.
Welcome.
Hey, James.
Yeah.
Finally, good evening. This is our regular meeting of the Mansfield Conservation Commission, starting at 7:01 on June 18th, 2025. We have some of our members here, so I'll just go through kind of a roll call. Vice Chair Erin King,
Here.
Secretary Chad Rittenhouse here, members Miranda Davis,
Present.
and alternate member here, James Rankin. And joining us is staff liaison Michael Stanfile. Okay. Let's first go to our item 2, which is approval of minutes from May 21st, our last meeting.
Staff actually has 2 changes. So the first thing I actually changed already, this was just saved as special minutes, special meeting minutes, but it was our scheduled meeting. So I did change that to regular. But second, I wasn't here because I was ill. So staff was absent. Was the only thing that I caught.
Sick kid.
And you made those changes?
I did not make the staff absent. The other one was just in the naming of the file, but I want to make sure that it was saved as regular minutes as opposed to special minutes.
I will be.
I'll make a motion to approve with Michael's suggested changes. Have a second?
Second.
Any other changes or additions or deletions?
Just reading.
We,
Reading the minutes now, because Maria and I were here, so.
yeah, so we cannot approve these.
You do not have a quorum of people who are
Okay.
present, so you can move them to the July meeting and just wait for approval until then.
Mhm. Okay. Okay, there is no public here for comments. 4A is easement monitoring. I think we tried to get out this last weekend, but none of us.
It did not happen.
Available, yeah.
It
Yeah,
did-
like in the future, like if there's 2 people, I'm just not,
That's fine.
yeah, because I've been burned before. I don't want
No.
to. I don't want
That's absolutely okay.
3 is our bare minimum.
to. Sorry.
No, I was-
It wasn't
It
your.
was potentially.
I had, it's fine. We're not necessarily, we don't have to do it.
There's been like plenty of times where like someone gets sick or like something comes up, you know, there's always.
Then it's just you
And then it's
alone
one
walking on people's property.
Well, there's one time where it's just, it was the 2 of us, so it works if it's 3, because then at least you have like a cushion.
And James, you had emailed that you would be interested too, so it does help to have 3 people.
Oh, we didn't overlap.
I think it was.
We had 2
Oh,
people,
oh,
two
two
different
yeah.
people in 2 different time slots. So
Yeah.
that's all right. I think I might have mentioned it in the email, but we, over the course of the past 5 years, we have done half of them, which is not a great pace. Ideally, you would monitor every single one of them every year. If you were a land trust, that's not easily gonna happen. There are a couple of them that I intend to just grind out myself because frankly, there's not a lot of conservation value on some of the ones that were accepted with various subdivisions, and it's, you know, it's taken up like 40 of them on the list, and it's like just a subdivision where each one is a sliver, down like in Adeline Place and some of the ones at the south end of town. So those I intend to grind out on a nice day when I don't want to be in the office. But we're making good progress.
I'm
And
actually, yeah, I'm impressed that we.
I feel like we got a slow start too. Like,
Have we been doing it for 5 years? Like, we've been doing?
well, I mean, so
It's
since it was 2018, and 2018 was like when these started to get out in the field regularly, and then they were just with COVID.
Yeah.
Which slowed everything down. But since I arrived in 2022, 2023, we've done over a quarter of them. So we are getting there. And if we can keep up the rough pace that we've been doing, an 8-year turnaround is not good, but for an entirely volunteer base,
I think
that's
if we could
not
get it
bad.
down to
And
5,
if we could get it down to
that
5,
would be-
yes.
I think.
That's acceptable.
I mean, maybe there's some that are a priority that need to be every 2 to 3 years, but, or things that have like something egregious, they need to be.
I
pumped
think
up
any
on.
past violations should be.
Yep, higher. And the nice thing is because the town gets aerial photography updated every 6 months, even if we're only on the ground every 5 years, it's easy enough for me to scan through and see if there's anything obviously wrong. And contact property owners that way. So, do we want to try to have one in July? I know that we're moving into a time when people are even less available. Okay. The broad consensus is head shakes and Miranda is absolutely not face. So,
I think one thing is people's schedule, the other thing is it's just a lot harder to like see through the landscape in a way that can give us a better
that's very fair.
review of the property, and I think it's more people's schedules, it's hard to find time for everybody to get here.
Do you want to go on pause until September?
Yeah.
Okay.
Michael, in the past, Jennifer was posting these as a meeting since there was more than, I mean, we're essentially I think, isn't it the rule like 2 or more is a meeting, and so.
That's excellent question. And the actual answer is not anymore.
Good.
So the way the guidance that has
The
the guidance that has come down
That
now.
we weren't like doing anything.
No. So if we were to have a quorum of the body when we were doing these, it would hypothetically be a meeting. But because I think there's only been one time that we've actually had 4 folks out there all at once.
Sorry, it's just a fucking
That was
burning.
no, it's good. I have a Northern Mockingbird that lives at my house. I love listening to him saying. Anyway, the new guidance from Freedom of Information Act committee for the state is if you don't have a quorum, not a meeting, it's just a working group. All you have to do is just report on what happens back at a regular meeting. So that makes these much easier, and municipal staff are very happy that we don't have to be as draconian on, nobody can communicate, nobody can talk to each other. If you see each other at the grocery store, walk in other directions.
Already.
I'm aware. So no, that's no longer a thing. So these don't count as meetings. So that's good.
Excellent.
Yeah, it was 2023 guidance. So it's relatively new.
There's something else, I could be wrong, but maybe you've probably been resupplying the backpack.
Yes,
There's something in my head about like,
Yes.
there weren't the right signs, or there weren't enough nails, or
We-
something like that.
I bought about 1,000 nails. I bought about 6 boxes of aluminum nails. There are several in the backpack now, along with I've got easement signs in there as well as trailblazes. So whoever is
Okay.
picking it up is able to use it. And that lives in my office normally, but I put it, if nobody has picked it up by the Thursday before a monitor, I leave it at the community center with a little sticky on it, for people behind the desk saying that this is for Conservation Commission pickup. So if somebody's gonna swing by and get it on Friday or Saturday morning,
Is that where it is right now?
I brought it back
Okay.
over, so now it's in my
We're not
office.
doing it until September.
It'll just live under my desk and I'll kick it occasionally and stuff like that.
Okay. Yeah, that's something to look forward to in September then.
I just made this bigger, just to make sure there wasn't anybody in line.
Anything else on monitoring?
The monitor that happened just down the street here, I reached out to the property owners who were obviously, based on your on the ground monitoring, were like mowing into areas that are supposed to be easement.
The business?
The business, yep, they mowed back too far. They've agreed to, I walked it with them and I'm like, you see this part here? Don't mow past. And they said, great. So they've agreed to do that. And I've started to see that it is revegetating. And then the private property owner, I said, just, don't do more than a single mower pass behind your pool and just let the rest of it go back. He said, okay. So I'll see it from the air next year to see how that's going, but probably seem they're both very responsive.
Great. That's what we're trying to do is just, I think it's mostly just checking in with people that they know it's even there. And
Yep.
they know it's there. And mowing is not ideal, so.
Yeah, and actually, I was out for work with a landowner. She had come in, gotten permission to do invasive plant control in her easement that we have. And she mentioned that she had noticed that she had Phragmites on her property and she didn't know what it was, and that it would be great if, we had some sort of outreach that, educated landowners on invasives. So like, yeah, we've talked about it, but so just,
There is an organization.
I saw there's an
Yeah,
invasive
there's-
plant working group or something,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, there's-
Yep.
There's a ton.
Yeah.
Yeah, mention that. Okay, so I bring it forward.
Charlotte Pyle has connections in those.
Okay. We jump ahead unless there's anything else on that. Okay, so shooting for mid-September sometime and we can pull that together in August. Item 4B, POCD ongoing discussion. There's a couple of attachments here. I don't know. Michael,
So-
where would you like to start?
Yeah, so this is just an opportunity at a meeting. If anybody has things they want to discuss or ask questions about the POZD to do so. I sent out the first draft, chapter 2, to folks a couple weeks back. I got comments back from James, which was very insightful about a lot of stormwater stuff, and then some comments. I had some broad comments from John that came in back in January, and then he had some specific comments. I have, to the best of my ability, incorporated all of those comments and pulled in some of the additional research people did, added additional references, updated old references. And I'm working with our consultants now. I haven't provided that first revised draft here just because it's so messy in the red line. But as soon as I have that, so even if we don't wind up having a July meeting from availability, you'll get all of that in a draft to see, particularly if there's stuff when I try to incorporate your comments, if you feel I haven't done appropriate justice to it. But we're starting this revision process with what I think in many ways it's my most important chapter, and it's also a very hard chapter because it's very broad and there's a lot of scientific references, and science has evolved a lot in the last 10 years for a couple of these areas. And so I just wanted to, if there's any questions about anything, where we're going, what we want to do, this is an open place to discuss it. The biggest change in how we're structuring it from the chapter that's in here, the first draft, is that we are adding basically at the end of each of the subsections what has the town done since 2015. We think it's important that since we went through that whole exercise of, okay, these were our goals, what have we done? That now we capture in the body of the text, what have we done? So that way people can see that as the document is evolving, what steps are we taking? And from there, we can figure out where our deficiencies are. So I'll stop talking. If you guys want to, you can.
I'm still a little confused. Is the document supposed to be like literally what is happening, or is it aspirational too?
Kind of both, right? It is, what we want to do is we want to detail in the broad strokes, what's going on? What do we see from a planning standpoint? What do we see as our weaknesses? And then generally, where do we want to go? The body text of any individual chapter is supposed to generally be a summary of where the town is and what has happened of late. And then the actions at the end are our aspirational and directional goals for the town for the next 10 years. Some of them are less achievable than others, but they allow us to easily add nice lines when we go for grants that say, consistent with our conservation plan, yada, yada.
Why wouldn't it then just be like literally everything? So I used to do this in Ithaca and they just would have like one that was like 200 pages long. It was everything. So that they could then just be like, see, we already had it.
Well, see, that's the thing. Our whole thing is like 400 pages long. And it's a giant document. The full POCD from 2015 is 453
Why I
pages
haven't
long.
read the whole
And
thing.
that's why no one reads the whole thing. That's really why no one reads the whole thing. It's a gigantic document.
Too big.
And it's too big.
No one
and
has that kind of time.
People don't have the attention spans to do that. They don't have the time to do that. And I am,
It's less like a piece of literature, though, more like a reference document for substantiating, right, like decisions that come in the future, or decision points that come in the future.
yes, though, as brevity is the soul of wit, our document could use a bit more soul. And it's very easy to be vapid at length. I think there's a lot of places we can cut without really losing important material in order to maybe make it a little more navigable.
But isn't it to your credit for it to be long?
It's to our credit to be long. I have specific writing complaints about some of the previous writing. There's paragraphs that I think don't say anything and are just in there. So
We had that experience going on the action items too. It was hard to understand exactly
Right.
what the intent of.
there are places where I have added additional paragraphs to provide context, because I think there are areas where the document's lacking context. But additionally, I think that there are places where things are just, they're not actually saying anything. And so it's more worthwhile to cut where we're not saying anything at all and say more where it's pertinent to us. Like all the stuff that you brought up about chlorides
I was
is,
just reading that, I'm like, I didn't realize we had such a problem with chloride.
it's important because our public works department is also aware of it and trying to take steps to reduce how much salt we're using in the winter. So it's, yes, so he's directly involved in that. Oh,
James, is there, I mean, I apologize, I've just been so busy at work, I haven't really gotten a chance to review the draft or your comments, but I'm just curious, like, is there anything, do you want to speak to any of your comments tonight, or they speak for themselves?
I like this
So-
comment, as a hydrologist, I do not find stratified drift
Yeah, well, that
Very
one,
important.
I know it was. I threw it in there because I was hoping he would be here, because Mike, I was curious. When we're talking about stratified drift, are we talking literally about drift where there are current water withdrawals present? If so, then yeah, protect it. But
I
like,
think it's
I-
broader than
I
that.
do not believe that that has ever been in the context of Mansfield Environmental Trust in general, or Mr. Simon.
like the value is economic.
The value is the existence of a sand and gravel aquifer that
That
you can
you can
withdraw from.
tap into later. Yeah, so like if you're not gonna develop it, then it has no value. Like if it's just to be conserved, then it's pointless. It's like the same as everywhere else.
My understanding is that it's primarily a buffer in the case that climatic shifts were to reduce rainfall
Okay, Then
levels.
you can, I withdraw that completely.
But
Yeah, if it could be tapped into later, then okay, cool.
it's a hypothetical future resource.
Yeah,
Um,
okay, then withdraw that one.
In the record.
And, I clicked on one of James' comments and it went to sort of a separate page, and then there's another abbreviation for LN.
I was wondering who that is.
Who
too.
is LN?
that is Laura Nagel. So Laura is our primary consultant writer. She's the one who's been updating those. So comments from LN. If there are outstanding comments from her, like, we're still working on this, that is because our consultant is
Okay.
still getting updated data.
Thank you.
Yeah, is it the deer one that you see her coming?
I'm trying to like skim and get my.
Yeah, she did have a comment about that. And that is one of the funny things about updating this document only every 10 years, when we've had an almost complete turnover in the department in the last 10 years, is trying to figure out why certain people cared about certain things 10 years ago that we have basically no context for now. So there was a big concern about deer in 2015, and it's not that there aren't deer problems, but it warranted its own thing in 2015, so I don't know if there was a specific circumstance that meant people were talking about it,
I wasn't here.
so.
Yeah, I think my comments were generally that like. I think that the three big ones I had were like, yeah, road salts are a problem. They should
Mhm.
probably be captured. From my point of view, like there was a lot of attention paid to like atmospheric climate change, but like just basic land development will probably have a bigger impact on our water quality than anything happening with the rain. And that wasn't really in there much.
Mhm.
And then there just wasn't anything in there about the fact that we've been like losing certain tree species dramatically over the past couple of years. Like,
Yes.
thousands.
Yeah, I substantially expanded the sections that talked about the various invasive species that have been affecting our forests because I just today got the signed state contract for our forest inventory that the town's gonna be doing, going over what's been happening with all of our tree species and creating a plan for harvest, salvage, invasive species removal, all stuff. Yeah.
That one's always tricky because like you can't really get the insects out once you have them. All you can do is save the next town over.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit like selfless, but not as exciting as stormwater management.
No, but I mean, from my point of view, looking at it at the 200-year timescale,
Yeah.
if the forest ecosystem necessarily will have reduced presence of these species, then we have to start planning for what that looks like and go from there for creating a healthy canopy. So.
Is there any sort of, planting or restoration, recommendations or even action items?
So
Maybe we're getting
not
towards
in the POCD right now. It's stuff that we're working on. So we have a management priority thing for wet and woods. That's gonna start 2026. And then we're working on a townwide one of those. We go to RFQ for that this coming month, to begin working on exactly that document for our various large forest parcels of, okay, so here's what we've got. Here's what's still there.
You're
Here's what's.
inventorying all your forests.
Yes,
town-owned
the plan is to do a full inventory of all the town-owned forests, identify what healthy tree species are there, what seeds, and then figure out what the invasive presence is, such that, not invasive insects, but invasive plants, so that way, once we do selective harvests to try to get some regeneration, that we'll be able to treat for invasives ahead of time and not get completely taken over by barberry. And-
Yeah.
But
I mean, I am
They're
very
already
curious to
filling in
see
gaps
what
in
happens
forest
at Wet and Woods, because that is a place that I would say has high deer pressure. And we're gonna go in and
And
do
invasives.
invasive control. And so I'm very curious to see what comes back.
Yeah, we
and if
have
Get any regeneration.
the-
It's just gonna come back forever.
So the biggest thing is we have to wipe out the barberry that's on that feeder stream in Fenton before we can do the harvest. And that's actually why we got delayed from this year, because with all of the weirdness of the budgetary reimbursements, our partners weren't able to
The IRA
commit.
funding got frozen.
Yeah, our partners weren't able to commit to the invasive removal of the barberry along that stream course, and we weren't willing to open up the canopy with the timber salvage until we weren't gonna risk spreading it further. So the plan is 2026, and we're gonna see how it goes. We've got some money in contingency for deer fencing around some of our larger oaks, such that if we get some acorn seeding out of them and saplings come up, we can exclude deer for a couple of years until they establish. Let's see what we got.
that, we looked at that Wet and Woods Forest Management Plan like a couple of years ago. I'm
Yep.
just wondering, has it been revised at all since then?
No,
or-
so it's only 6 years old. Right now it's a 6-year-old plan, which is within its consistency when it's a 10-year plan. So we're trying to act on it now. So it's pretty much the only forest parcel that isn't included in the forest inventory, because we know what's out there. Randy, you got a comment?
I'm just laughing because the management plans are currently the main issue in front of the planner fee at the moment, and
In front of
better
them?
way, in front of the Natural Resources Committee. And we're moving very slowly.
Um,
So some of the management plans are older than I am. The 1990 management plan really should have been updated a few times since it last was.
So, you know, talking about one that's 5 or 8 years old, like, hey.
That's great, yeah. We have no
Well-
parks that have a,
Well, maybe not the forest management plan, the actual like. The actual harvest, the actual timber
Mhm.
harvest plan.
Mhm.
There was a company out of Ashford, I think, that came to one of our meetings and talked to us, or maybe came to PNRC meeting, but like. We had a chance to like actually, like how they were gonna access in, where they were gonna selectively cut, and then I guess my biggest concern sort of to what Aaron is mentioning is like. The post monitoring to make sure that, you know, a lot of times work is done and then it's like, oh, we're done, great,
Yeah.
but like that, the invasives could
So-
really go crazy. in there.
so the plan for Wet and Woods, which again, this is 2026, so we haven't signed contracts on this, but it's, the plan is a invasive removal to start and then do the salvage and then have 3 years of monitoring afterwards, with continued, invasive removal as there's resprout. And because that's consistent with the NRCS, requirements for 90% eradication. So that's something that we're very aware of and you have to keep pressure up on it. If you can keep the invasives out for a few years and let your understory reestablish, it helps. But yeah, and that's actually a standard thing now, that we have whenever we have, wetlands permits with, that have any disturbance of wetland or wetland buffer that we're putting on 3 years of monitoring for all plantings afterwards, removal of invasives and reporting, so.
Is there kind of notices to a radius of residents?
When we get started, yeah, when we're gonna get started, there will be. And we're gonna be doing we'll have a public information meeting and, a walk out there, stuff like that.
Great.
Yeah, unfortunately, NRCS lost their public affairs.
There's a related but not totally related question. There's a couple of gas line right of ways through town. I've noticed that they're often covered with knot.
Yeah,
Whose job is it to manage that?
that would be gas line.
Yeah, how do you get in touch with them and like who should get in
Right.
touch with them?
Oh, sorry, so snark aside, it's mostly Algonquin or one of their successors. I don't remember if Algonquin is still Algonquin. There are like land management divisions for those companies. They come through and mow every couple of years in order to keep it.
But they don't,
functional.
in my experience, usually like when you get a right of way, it's like you're signing something committing to managing the land in a
I've
certain
yet
way.
to see that in this in this
They don't do that,
area.
not so
I've
much.
worked on a lot of utility right of ways and they'll manage the vegetation for the utility, but not in any ecological. kind of
Yeah, as
way.
long as-
It's,
Although
They're all covered.
and it's unfortunate because they're just prime corridors
Yeah.
for migration of invasives and. I mean, it's a big swath of edge habitat right through the heart of a whole bunch of otherwise contiguous forest parcels, and that's just.
So that kind of worries me, because like even if you get rid of it everywhere else, if there's this
Yeah.
like.
It's gonna be
Ginormous
so much,
anchor
yeah.
that- Yeah,
Yeah.
Well, and they'd have to mow it down 3 times a year or something.
Yeah, you got, I mean,
2 or
the
3 years before
multiflora,
it's actually there.
autumn olive and knotweed and Phragmites like live in.
What if we
utility right of ways,
Yeah.
I feel like.
just glyphosate the entire thing
There you
and
go.
then
Yeah.
follow it
Well,
with conservation
and
season.
then we can act glyphosate to what people see.
We'll use so much
So
of it.
back in 2025.
That's
The PUCP.
none of the no longer employed environmental planners said to just glyphosate the whole thing. The whole thing.
Not stock the next day. Yeah, I don't know, I mean, personally, invasives are such a complicated thing, and like, they just seem to pop, like, even all the barberry, not to be cynical, but like all the barberry and wetton, the seed bank there has gotta be gonna go for decades, but knotweed drives me crazy. It's just, because once it jumps up, there's nothing else there, it has no ecological value to it, it seems like, so. It just chokes everything out. Anyway,
So you're going through some of the citations and updating them, that was the biggest. I mean, I
Yes,
looked
we're
at
getting,
it.
we're getting any plans that have been updated in the last 10 years. And I'm trying to pull more recent data for anything that's like back in 2011. I'm like, there's gotta be research in the last 14
Yeah, I want to
years.
like 2006, there was a Dana note, and I was like, no, there's.
Yeah.
So much.
So we were trying to get everything into the last decade.
I heard of
Here's a
Matt
bunch of
Bottom, a
hyphenated
couple-
Mansfields you don't need,
Oh, yeah, the formatting.
just so you know, like they were probably once at the end of a line and they no longer are.
Was it on Insulet?
I was gonna say, they're doing a lot of like large scale Phragmites control and they cut it really hard. I forget their sequence, but they cut it really hard several times in a single season, so they hit it so hard that the chemical treatment they need to use is like a fraction of what you would normally use. So I think they cut it 3 times at certain times of the growing season and then treat it, and then they kind of do that same thing for, I think, 2 more years. But they've had a lot of success. They've had a lot of success kind of eradicating it from salt marshes in southeastern Mass.
This is retinitis.
Yeah.
Huh.
You don't have a special, I mean, yeah, special equipment to get in there and cut it, right? It's-
Yeah, I think if it's small enough, you can like have one of those backpack like things where you like a hedge clipper that's gas powered, and they're just kind of doing that. If it's much larger, then they're bringing in like a Marshmaster or something like
Yeah,
that
I
to
guess there's-
drive the
It's interesting, like aluminum frame mowers that you can have bumpers on that can like float on. There was talking to a company that was considering doing it for a patch of frag that we have in town. It was beyond my available budget.
Do you look on-
Yeah, I can, if you like send me an email, or I'll write it down. I can at least send you kind of the flyer that they developed, either for internally or it's like they held a walk out at Great Marsh in Dennis or somewhere out like that in the Cape. And they developed kind of a 2-page flyer on like what their system is right now. So, yeah, I can give you that, and then I can connect you with the 1 or 2 people that I know of. Okay, so Michael, I was curious, is there a timeline looking for comments back on chapter 2? It's gonna take me at least a couple weeks. to get onto that.
As soon as you can, so the way that, I did say ASAP, no, so the basic way that this is going to work is that we are intending to have a draft of the full plan in September. And we are taking rolling comments as we go. We're trying to provide a 2-week window for comments, for each chapter as we get them.
Weeks would be better.
It would be, fortunately for you folks, the most important chapters are 2 and then probably 8, which is future land use.
What's 3? Can you?
3 is agriculture and open spaces, which is definitely something that you can look at and get feedback on, but mostly I'm going to be looking for that from my agriculture committee and Parks and Natural Resources. That one should be coming very soon. But the big thing is that because we're a little earlier in the process, if it takes us a little longer to get comments in, we have more time to integrate them. And I'm dedicated to the writing process and not just the consultant. So I will be integrating those as we go. But my public works director, town engineer Derek July, he can't get me comments on like the status of all the dams and all the maintenance we've done for another 2 weeks because he's just slammed. So if it takes you until July, that's okay.
All right. Appreciate that, thank you.
Oh, this is the citation. Someone else highlighted it here. According to 2006 Connecticut Deep publication, 12 of 16 shrubland birds and 7 of 10 grassland birds have declining population trend.
Yep.
16 of 16 and 10 of 10.
It is probably 16 or 16, 10 of 10.
Anyway,
Okay. And chapter 8 could be coming to us in July potentially? No. Okay.
No, chapter 8 will be August or September.
Okay.
Chapter 8 is very close to the end. But I would look for that in August.
Okay.
Right when everybody's gonna get back to UConn and is the seal. So. I'll give you this.
there isn't any non-busy time. No matter.
Yeah.
Four C, Michael, I think you might have been the only one that got to this
Yes,
function.
It
yes.
was in the middle of the day.
It is in the matter of fact, in the middle of the day. So the Natural Watershed Plan. So back in 2020, the Eastern Connecticut Conservation District worked with the 8 towns that are in 10 towns, 8, and then barely 2 more, that are in the Natural Watershed to put together this nice 158-page document on the Natural River and the various BMPs that would be good to protect it. The very high-level summary of why the Natural River matters is that this corner of Connecticut is one of the least developed corners, and the Natchog is at very high water quality compared to the Willimantic, which is relatively impacted. Because of the low level of development on the Fenton Mount Hope Natchog, the state has denoted that area as like a watershed for protection, in particularly from development. So this plan is figuring out what are the BMPs that need to be implemented by towns in order to move forward, what's the education that needs to be done, various things. The meeting is because there was a grant that the Eastern Connecticut Conservation District got to start working with towns to start implementing some of these BMPs. There's money to do some example projects, implement some stormwater improvements, stuff like that. But they have to work with the towns as the primary vehicle of doing that. What they're asking for is they're asking for a bunch of towns to sign some MOUs that the towns will send a staff person to contribute some staff time to make this stuff happen, and work with them on kind of a larger coordinating effort. They're also working with the folks down at the Willimantic Waterworks, who are obviously very concerned about the quality of water that comes down from into their drinking reservoir. So I went to that meeting. I didn't manage to go to the meeting yesterday. I had to take some animals to the vet, but other than that, I volunteered to be the secretary for that body because somebody had to do it and no one would raise their hand. And so I'm just like Chad. So the plan for this really is it's mostly going to be, if towns agree, staff people from the towns are going to work on making the various things that are outlined in this plan a reality with some grant money that's on the table, and hopefully this results in some cross-town networking and contribution. There's some really interesting ringtones.
Picture.
So anyway, that's what's going on with the Natchog watershed plan.
Is it strictly staff from the towns? I mean,
That is,
There was some like working groups or something, or like, I thought there was like a wildlife one or.
so the ECCD right now is asking specifically for staff people. And then as the kind of like working groups of like, what are the various tasks to be decided on, bringing them to appropriate people in the towns to kind of like get that moving. And if folk who are from town committees wants to volunteer to come to the meetings, that's great. But the understanding of like, this is really gonna happen most efficiently and the grant obligations will be met if the towns are willing to put up some staff people to spend a little bit of time on it, which is fair. So that's kind of where we are.
I'd say we have a unique capacity in this town of like, experienced, well-trained people and things that have been interested, people interested in stormwater, for example, or, wildlife habitat could potentially help if that's, I used to work for ECCD and I know Maura, so I should reach out and just kind of follow up and catch up, but there's like a couple things in here that are interesting to me and things that I work on, but,
But are they just looking for matching funds? Is that? what-
No, they're not looking for matching.
Okay.
No, they're not looking, it's not about matching funds. Honestly, it's
Matching.
capacity.
It's
They
capacity.
need some staff match for their grant obligations, but to actually make the stuff happen, they need capacity and they need the towns to buy into it. And I have some strong feelings about the only way this is going to happen is if we actually manage to yoke people from every town into pulling in the same direction. And so we can't, there is no centralizing body for towns in Connecticut. It's a small organizational sidebar. There's no organizing body for every town in Connecticut. The state has absolutely no direction for us. We are 169 chickens going in random directions and pecking randomly at whatever we want in our own area of pasture. And that is a problem because it means that because the lines for the towns are arbitrarily drawn and we really stop paying attention to what happens next door. And so the issue with this is I don't even know what's going on in Wellington, but they're directly north of us. And ideally, we would have like a once a month meeting with their planning department. My planning department would meet with them, and we would do this for all of the surrounding towns so we can coordinate on projects, and that just never happens. So trying to get good organizational planning for something like this involves getting everybody's contact info and then really staying on top of what's going to happen. And that is my highest priority for this project.
Connecticut has no like legal mechanism to establish like water law based on watershed boundaries. Like I know Pennsylvania does, like.
Not that I know.
Really? No, the state deep says, do these things, guys, and we'll give you money. Here's some grant money available. Deep's been critically understaffed for, I assume, since it was founded. CT home rule really just means the state just devolves stuff into the local areas, but while you can create like cross-town agreements, the dissolution of the counties and the sheriffs back in the 70s probably, and replacement with the COGS means that there's no authority that all the towns answer to other than the state. The COGS are really just organizing bodies and they are advisory as opposed to administrative. So the towns just kind of do their own thing.
Like the state through, I think through DEEP, right, they protect these aquifer protection areas, with like sort of designated areas, but to your point about certain watershed protections, it's more like voluntary, I would say.
This is kind of what the conservation district is trying to do is make everybody voluntarily make one of these.
And then, I mean, there's 3 slides of potential working groups, like it's pretty ambitious. The one that jumped out to me is the stream habitat connectivity work group. A lot of that culvert assessment stuff, I've done like 800 culvert assessments, and like I think that kind of work is really helpful for prioritizing, design and implementation of actual, dealing with undersized or failed culverts. So like that's my interest here is like if they want to develop some capacity, there's lots of people that they can potentially bring in if it's not just staff to kind of build up groups or think about what the methods would be to kind of tackle some of these things beyond just staff. Because I mean, yes, have a full-time job already, right? So this ends up being something to add to it that I don't know if Concoms or other groups within these towns can be part of that capacity.
So there were some folk from Ashford's Conservation Commission who were at the May meeting. So there is some interest there in being involved. I would say Mansfield has a deeper pool of potential people to tap than a lot of these other communities. It may not feel like it, but somehow we're one of the more populated towns here, even without UConn, which is wild.
UConn meaning the.
If you eliminate the student population and you're down to the 9,000 or 10,000 people who are here year round, Mansfield is
All
still
the people who work for UConn.
right. That's kind of the thing. But yes, the only town that is larger is Wyndham. Union has 800 people.
Yeah.
In the entire town.
800.
Yes, Union is the least populated town in the state of Connecticut. It has 800 people, and it's almost as large as Glastonbury, in land area.
Wow.
Yes,
Quiet corner.
not a lot of people up here.
I do like going big.
Eastford has like 1,200 people. Ashford, lots of them with 5,000, nearly. So
That's where I grew up.
lot of trees, nice Boy Scout camp up there.
Right by the Boy Scouts.
It's a great place.
Lived up.
Anyway, yeah, not a lot of people live here, which means that some of the towns just don't have capacity to do much in the way of contributing.
Well, I think along the lines of what Michael was saying, like if they did, we're looking for people to help with these groups. They were.
Yes,
focused on this
and if you folks are excited, we would love to have you.
Excited might not be the right word,
That's
but,
If you are willing to suffer for your misguided sense of the greater good.
What's the
It is
next
COVID study.
step, I guess?
So what they are desperately trying to do right now is get each of the towns to sign the MOU that says, yes, we're on board with the project. And then we are starting to figure out what working groups are available based on who's interested in what. Really, the working
Is
groups
the
are,
town willing to sign the MOU, do you think?
I think the town is willing to sign the MOU. The agenda for our town attorney meetings just keeps getting longer because there's lots of things. And so we requested that he review it because it is an MOU and he just hasn't gotten to it yet. I am hoping that because it is asking for very little, he's willing to sign off on that and it can go on the next consent agenda for the town council probably in July. And so if anyone wants to come to the meeting, it is middle of the day and that's hard.
The attorney meeting or?
No, not the attorney
No.
meeting. If anybody wants to come to the next, natural
Yeah,
watershed
when is that?
meeting, the most recent one was literally yesterday. So we're talking, middle of July. We're talking, I think, the 15th of July.
Oh, I didn't hear about the one yesterday, so I guess, because I didn't get to the other one I got.
Yeah, there's been some difficulty with, the email list, so.
Once we're out of summer, I would find.
I will just forward all the emails to you folks. And that way you can stay up to date.
Yeah. that'd be good. Cool. I canoed on the National a couple weeks ago. It was pretty fun. New business. Proposed purple loose stripe control work with IPM with blue stripe people. Exciting.
Where's that?
Oh, that's Willimantic. So we have been managing Eagleville Lake, the impoundment on the Eagleville River for a couple of years. We finally got the state to give us the grant money for this year, and got it all through finance and signed our contracts with people. So we're gonna have our aquatic scientists and solitude lake management out there over the next couple of months. We'll be doing some handfuls of water chestnut and some plumagard application for fanwort and other problematic filamentous species. But there's a lot of purple loosestrife out there. And our aquatics control methods have done two things. They have looked at that and gone, yep, that's purple loosestrife. You guys should deal with that. And then they've gone back to dealing with stuff in the water. So we're aware that there's a lot of purple loosestrife out there. This is jointly managed with Coventry. This is an early on idea of, okay, so for next year, would we like to explore trying to control purple loosestrife? Loosestrife beetle is,
This is proposed.
this is
I
proposed.
was like, I read it as if this.
No. So this is not happening. So one of the things is, I view any integrated pest management is one of those things that people can be very nervous about. Loosestrife beetle is fairly conspecific with its host and doesn't pose a large number of problems from my reading of the literature of
It's been
predator
pretty
prey.
established in Connecticut for a while, I'd say, too, in terms of its success.
We could probably get deep to approve it if the town is hypothetically interested in trying it out. We have some money in our invasive control fund, which is more than lots of other places can say. So this is something we could try to see how it goes. But this town, we've never done this before. And so some folks in Coventry said, what do you think? Should we do it? And I am just coming to the Conservation Commission to say, what do you guys think? Because if we propose doing this, we're probably gonna want a letter from this body that says, you know, this is what the science says, this is found to be sound in the state of Connecticut, and we think that this is a responsible practice. And so that's this is all just on the agenda to say, does anybody have any initial thoughts on, is this a good idea?
I
Or
would want to read up on. it.
From what I've read,
I'd
it's-
want some
I
time to read
haven't,
up on it.
I know that, like, my former job, National Wildlife Refuge, we released them and there hasn't been. It's been effective and there hasn't been any like. You know, they just kind of disappear after the loose strikes.
Yeah.
There hasn't been
Yeah,
like
my-
negative effects.
That's the little I know about is that they've been successful. They stay on the invasive loosestrife, and the released populations can sometimes kind of just end up sustaining themselves until they kind of eat all the loosestrife and either die out or kind of find other stands that they move over to. So I haven't heard any bad things about it.
I feel it's just one of those things. My understanding is loose stripe beetle is one of the examples that works, but it's just in any ecology class, it's the thing that they
Oh,
teach you
yeah.
of. Don't do this until you've
But I was-
really studied it.
The woman who
Um,
brought this to Connecticut, I think she worked at, she was part of that invasive plant network. And she might even have worked at the Ag Experiment Station. I think they really tried to figure it out before they went out in the field with it.
The experiments they do these days, like in the lab and like in the field to test these, you know, these insects out, it's pretty rigorous. I mean, they've been trying to get a Phragmites one for years and.
I mean, are other areas near us already using, I mean, if they are, then it's kind of,
It-
it's already
I think the ones I like
being
about
used,
were
so
on the
we
coast.
shouldn't sweat too much. because
Yeah.
it's used.
It's definitely been done in parts of Connecticut. Yeah,
But
it's definitely been out. in
It's
the-
just like not as much up here.
Yeah.
I would be
Yeah.
much more concerned if we were like the ones that were.
Oh, no,
but if
that-
we're not,
yeah.
then They, then we're.
I'm just trying to think if I've heard any that are in the ones I know.
Yeah, I haven't heard about it in years, but I remember 4 or 5 years ago, we talked about it at my job as a potential option for a site. And all the work, everything that we looked into about it was like, it has success so far in this area.
I'll see if I can pull some of the literature. I believe the state has some materials, but
I mean, it'd be great to have something that worked.
it's just a really true statement blanket. Kind of.
That's what our letter's gonna say.
It would be great to have something that works, and it seems like this does, so let's go for it.
It's our endorsement.
This is a bug that eats it. Did you reach out to the Ag Experimental Station?
I haven't talked to Ag Experimentation on this matter specifically. But the Mark collaborator in Coventry who's looking to do this is Eric Thomas, who's formerly of Deep.
Where is he now?
He was in one of Deep's water courses.
Oh, he lives in
He
Coventry.
lives in Coventry, and he's the
Yeah,
chair.
I used to work with him.
Yeah, so he is the guy who often is leading the paddles that we do down the Willimantic as part of our like public outreach for.
He's a very knowledgeable person.
Yeah.
So if he has information in terms of its success,
I will see what he says.
Yeah, so maybe we can look at some of that stuff and then have a motion or a letter to. that.
Can do.
Cool. Any reports from members?
There was that Army Corps thing, I never got to it. That
Oh,
day,
yeah,
years
yeah.
ago.
I did get there.
Yeah,
Um,
they said, nothing, right?
More than nothing, but less than something.
Yeah.
They have finished taking all the lands that they previously colored in with a yellow crayon and set other, and have now moved it over to basically just coincide with what all of the management groups that the state Deep was using. So the land is owned by the Army Corps, but is managed for recreation by Deep. Deep has managed different parts of it for recreation in different ways for years. Now the Army Corps is just updating its regulations, and most of that is now consistent with what Deep was proposing. There is a little bit of area that Army Corps is more interested in. There's specifically a pine barren it's in Willimantic, so it's less concerning for us, but there's some Pine Barren land to the south of the dam that they're interested in doing some research and restoration in. And then there's an area slightly to the north of the dam that they are intending to do some like more timber salvage in, but it's not a whole lot of particularly controversial work. They've said that they're really going to continue to not be involved in active management decisions and continue to let EAP's Parks Division manage it. So,
So no, like ripping the dam down.
no, I don't think they're going to rip the dam down. And if they do so, I'm sure they're not going to do it suddenly and wipe out Willimantic.
Yeah, my sense from the first meeting I went to was like, this is 25 years old. We're a group of people out of an Army Corps office in Texas, up here in New England, visiting like 8 places to update these plans for all these places. So like, we're just sort of centralizing this process and it's not very granular. It's just an update, like you said, to Deep's management.
The maps now reflect current practices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Making things congruent is good.
That's where it's at.
But that's pretty much where it's at. I know that the CFPA, Connecticut Horseman Parks Association, is dealing with just their trails because they manage the Blue Dot Nipmuc Trail that goes that area, and they are constantly confronted with the fact that that trail is getting wiped out by flooding. And so they are going to be working with the state on potentially moving the exact elevation of that trail where it follows the fence. We have realigned that trail, or we are going to by the end of the summer, where it crosses 89. Because that it's dangerous, otherwise people come around the corner way too quickly. So we laid all the groundwork for that last year. We have some flashing beacons like the ones you see out front here. The crossing will be slightly further down, but that's the stuff that's coming up in the park.
Cool. Thanks for asking, Jane. I forgot about that. Any other communications? Any agent approvals or nothing really happening?
In the past month, not a lot. There's one that there was a whole bunch of stuff that happened before the previous meeting. And that's in the most recent wetlands notes, are probably the ones in May. A bunch of small projects for some folks who wants a shed, who needs to repair their deck. There's a pending permit for a patio on Echo Lake. It's about 10 feet from the water edge. It's in a very flat area. It's a pervious paver patio. It's close to a water body. I'm just gonna monitor it. I think the property owner is gonna do a responsible job with it. But no, actually kind of slow year for construction.
Is there still regular oversight of large construction, like what's happening in 195? Like, is that because
I go out there
you
every,
still have kind of, bare soil and stuff like that?
I go out there every 2 weeks. They have an agent that inspects every week. I get their reports. I'm out there every 2 weeks, generally checking. I walk along the edge of their silt fence, checking their establishment, places where they've got a 3-to-1 slope that just refuses to stabilize, stuff like that. So fortunately, along the wetlands edges, things are getting better. They've been removing some of their construction fencing as they come to kind of the end of their project phasing, but their silt fencing is still in place along the entire exterior. And they've been continuing to do turbidity testing in the wetlands restoration area. And that water is nice and clear. So that's good.
Okay.
The wetlands restoration is coming along very nicely. Every single one of the trees they planted took. So that's really, really good. I'm optimistic about the canopy restoration.
Cool. Right, any other communications, thoughts, musings, wishes?
There's just 2 different species of blue striped beetle. Go ahead.
Fun fact.
Fun facts. Learned something today.
I have a question about drone activities.
Okay.
Particularly around town events. I noticed there were drones over the Memorial Day parade in the cemetery.
Okay.
Is there any official town thing about town events and drones?
I don't know. I will find out. What I can tell you is that we don't use drones in
So-
my department.
So it's
I
private
think it's
citizens who
private
came.
Um,
with drones.
Policy for.
I mean, there are several community members who like to post stuff showing updates on the town and their drones. It's probably.
Events and properties.
You're worried.
It just,
He doesn't like it.
Feels a little creepy.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got a camera on it, they're doing live recordings.
We
I don't like it.
from an enforcement standpoint, from wetlands or zoning enforcement, we don't use them because there has never been a state or federal ruling from the courts as to whether or not the use of those counts as a reasonable encroachment or not, because aerial photography has been ruled to be fine because it's become so pervasive between satellites and planes that if it's visible from those on the aerial photography we have, that's fine. But that for enforcement is saying like, okay, you're obviously filling that wetland, even if I can't get on your property. But there's never been something now, should people have a reasonable expectation of privacy against them flying a drone over their property, or even flying a drone just straight up from the street and looking over the back of your house, never been ruled on. So all the lawyers say, don't open the can of worms. So we just don't use them. So I'll find out about that policy for you.
Yeah, I mean, it was just me personally. I'd like to know, but
Yeah.
I also think it's disrespectful to fly drones over cemeteries. Particularly when there's a town event recognizing service members.
I can look into it. Look into those ones.
Makes it feel like a bit of a zoo or a spectacle rather than what it should be.
The American way.
There's another one, that's an idea that came up like 6 months ago, and then it came up like 3 months ago. There's talk about catching up on the easement monitoring by hiring people.
And I
to,
really,
like,
I
help,
kind of wanted to
like,
get up
kids.
during the budget meeting and be like, I'd like to hire someone
Yeah.
to monitor our easement.
'Cause I know that there's always undergrads in our department that are like trained in this stuff that are looking for work.
Yeah,
And I hire undergrads, not for very much. They're cheap.
They're cheap.
there are a lot of students who would be interested in gaining that kind of experience just to have field work.
We did it one summer when Jennifer was still our staff liaison and the person never showed up. And I'm not saying that's,
Oh, no, that's.
I'm just saying, like, we-
For sure.
yeah. I'm
Yeah.
not like speaking to, I just was like, I think
Here
the
it's
effort was
gonna
made
be
and
like
then there's
4
just
out
not
of 10.
fill though.
Yeah, yes, there's gonna be some
I think
failures.
if you,
Yeah,
I
no,
think if
not-
you pay them though, I think they would show up.
Yeah,
Even if- And
yeah,
it wouldn't be that much, because it's, I don't think.
I think even if you pay them, they're not all gonna show
They're not
up.
all gonna
Yeah,
show up.
But
still.
they're in this line of work, right? They
Yeah.
wanna do field work and this is a
Exactly.
pretty easy way to do field work and
If
get
they
to
don't
use.
show up, no money gets spent.
But I think it's good practice on like reading maps in the field, bushwhacking. It would be a good experience for people like that.
Yeah.
I could very easily sell it to students who be interested. in it.
Yeah, like a couple of college kids at like 20, 40 hours a week would like knock out a lot.
And I think it would also be, I think that some of the issues we're talking about would get weeded out through standard vetting of people who are having experience with those people.
I just have to, if we want to explore that, what I'll do is, Jennifer's back next week and I can talk about what we have in the budget for some additional staffing. For this upcoming calendar year. The biggest thing for me is that I want to have a work plan. I'm gonna hire somebody. I want to make sure that I have enough work for them to
Don't
do.
buy 1,000 nails.
Um,
500.
Gonna return these nails to the Home Depot. Yeah, I just need to figure that out, but I'll see if I can come up with a work plan for that. And if that'll work, folks can talk it up in the classes they teach.
Well, I think it's important that the person has some like field ability, but also like relatability because a lot of what the work is not just like checking on the stuff, but yeah, like being the,
Really simple.
like you're good with people, Michael, and I think, you know, we just try to be friendly to the abutters or the owners when we're there. Like, I think we're really just there as a representative of the town to like
Mhm.
make this a good relationship and keep them aware of things, so. Yeah, I guess the first thing is if there's even budget, then we can kind of, you, Jennifer, can kind of think about how to,
Yeah.
how you want to structure to get the word out.
Or maybe the town is fine with our progress and the current rate is.
I was really pleased at 50%.
I was.
It's even if like every 2 years, James's idea was used, right? Just to kind of like accelerate the process a bit, and then there's not but money every year to hire those kinds of folks. But maybe once in a while there could be money for it.
I
so.
think we could get good people your way.
I think that's quite likely. I know that there's enough motivated students in the various departments related to land use and ecology that you can get some folks out for that. So let me see what we got available and a work plan, because if we were gonna do that, there's somewhere for conservation monitoring, but we might also be able to have them do park boundaries and update blazes and park trails, go ahead and monitor some of that.
Wasn't there
and-
somebody doing that? They were mapping trails.
We had some of that last year, and then we have someone in the budget for public works starting 2026, who's gonna be a more permanent trails maintainer. So starting for the next year, which is good because it brings somebody, there's a lot of trees that go down. The aforementioned enormous number of invasive bugs that are killing the trees have knocked down a lot of trees or left standing a lot of dead trees, and we know we need to get on top of it. So that is intended.
Because the trees are on the trail.
There are enough trees close
Close to the
to
trail.
the trails that are standing dead that will come down when the next hurricane comes through. That are going to be an issue. It's been. Isaias was not that bad up here.
The issue is that they fall on the trail.
They will fall on the trail and then they will.
All at once, all at once.
all at once.
I mean,
the big
if
storms
if we
is
if we get Irene or Sandy back through, like. It's been 15 years since we had a really bad hurricane go through, and there has been a lot of tree deaths since then. There was an estimate that something like 33% of Connecticut's trees would be at risk of coming down if we got hit by a Category 5 hurricane, just because how many of them are dead or dying or have experienced soil stabilization or are close enough to those that they'll come down when they get hit by the other ones falling. And so that's something that we were talking about in the emergency management workshop of like, what does that look like? And it's like this massive liability for our public works department, like, how do we even count maintaining that many trees?
Attachment on the town trucks, it's just like this big grinding pulse, so you can just drive down roads and cut it as it goes.
Yeah.
Like a auger.
Yeah.
You just
Sure.
grind.
Slap it to the front when the trees are,
New
Nothing over.
attachment for your truck.
anyway,
It's gonna be a mess.
yeah, but there's probably work with that. I think I just need to like work up a plan for what would be involved, and if there's money, I'll let you all know. Maybe we can come up with.
I didn't mean to say the progress wasn't good. But the progress is
No,
great. I just think it sounds like a cool job.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I kind of want to.
Yeah.
well, I
I
mean,
might have to do.
frankly, even if it's not us alone, Joshua's Trust has a lot of land that needs to be monitored as well, and there's potential for collaboration there, or like jointly.
I'd love to do it as a
managing.
volunteer thing so that town doesn't have to spend money, but like the motivation, that's like people just are not, like, what's the incentive to show up or not show up? And like, that's what's frustrating. And so I think if there's money, it's a great way to give students like a real world
Yeah, an
opportunity
actual
of stuff
experience,
that
yeah.
like
Mhm.
every land trust needs to do it, every town needs to do it, the state does it. I used to do it for the state, so it's a great idea. It's just,
Yeah.
if we can do it for free, that'd be great, but it's hard to do it that way.
Cool.
Okay, next meeting is, July.
July.
Thank you, July 16th.
So we have a quorum right now, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, yes, 5. Will all of you be available on the 16th of
I'm gonna
July?
miss the next two meetings.
Good to know.
I will have dubious internet, but I might be able to make it.
Okay.
I'm around.
I should do it for the next one.
Around.
Okay, John's not available. Meg has resigned. So since our last meeting, yes, so Meg has resigned. She is, just,
Michael. Okay, is our meeting still open?
yes. Our meeting's still open. No, that's, I mean, that's public knowledge.
Maybe.
To me?
I emailed it to you.
You did?
Yes,
Okay.
the day she sent it.
We would have started with that and put you in a not alternate seat.
So that's actually something that we have to clear with, to permanently move you up from alternate into that other position.
3 years.
But, you know, yeah, so to this in some ways is very believed that Meg Harper emailed me, resigning her position. I swear I forwarded that to you.
That she,
Um,
I'll say it after the meeting.
but she is, she wanted to thank everyone for all the time and all the years and the effort that she put on. She feels like the group of people who is here now is really strong. And she just doesn't have as much time and availability to get here. She's often has been remote. And so she wanted to open it up to someone else if it was available. So James, as the most senior alternate, my plan is that if it's suitable for this body is to put your name in with the clerks to move you up to a permanent position. And then that opens up an alternate. Michael, I know there was an individual who you had referred to as potentially being interested in the ComsCon previously, so I'm gonna reach out and contact them to see if they're interested in potentially.
Yes, the woman who kind of reached out a month or so ago.
Yes, to see if she wants to fill the alternate.
You have
position.
her contact.
I do.
I believe that interest would still be there.
And so we will
Oh, that's
do that.
Thank you. Yes. I thought it was from somebody.
Yes, so that is.
You did send it to me. I apologize. It was, yeah. My personal email gets inundated sometimes and I totally missed that. It's all good.
I have like 3,000 unread emails.
I have 9,100.
My wife would say that you need to declare email bankruptcy and just accept that you're not gonna read them, and if they were
Oh,
really
I'm not.
important, the
Every once
bank.
in a while,
If they're really important, they're gonna send you something else that says you missed it. Yeah.
Can't do it.
I couldn't ever do it.
My wife stays at inbox 0, I don't know how she does it.
I can
Mine's
do
at
it.
work.
It doesn't work.
Mine's at-
I try and stay under 3,000. Yeah, go.
I have more purple loose.
Much like the national debt, every time it goes up to the next 1,000, you say, okay, now I'm gonna keep below 4,000.
Chad, can you put that under,
Put it under communication.
yeah, sure. Let's put that.
Um,
Great. Any other surprises?
Just kidding. Oh, I'm quitting tomorrow. I don't wanna talk to any of you ever again.
That's not.
No, we're not gonna do that. No, there's nothing else for us.
Congratulations, James. You put in your time. Now we'll bring you your scepter and, accolades next time.
Do you want a conservation commission scepter? Cause like there's a little bit of money left in the budget at the end of the fiscal year. I could probably.
Let's drop them. Let's
About
drop
that,
them.
I just got bumped up in the PNRC and that took like 6 years.
I know.
You know,
They're
I-
really good.
I can, okay, I'll find the bump up scepter. Let me see. What I can do.
Motion to adjourn?
I'll second that motion.
8:14.
8:14.
Great.
Stop recording, please.
Okay, yep.